Virtually everything that we've learned over the past week having to do with how we as a country are treating migrants held in the concentration camps that we have along the southern border and other parts of the country has been absolutely horrendous. But some of the new reporting is actually going back quite a ways, back to 2018. Take a look at this little tidbit. In July of 2018, 37 detained migrant children boarded vans in Texas so they could be reunited with their parents at the Port Isabel Detention Center. But when they reached the Immigration and Customs Enforcement run detention facility, they had to wait and wait. It took 39 hours and 2 nights spent sleeping in vans for the last child to be processed and reunited with their family, with most of the 5 to 12-year-olds waiting at least 23 hours in the center's parking lot. So in July in Texas, they spent multiple nights sleeping in a van. On average, at least 1 full day in a van in July in Texas. I don't know if many of you have been in Texas in July. I lived in Austin for like 5 years. It gets hot there. And if you're a kid, you do not want to spend an hour sitting in a van in a parking lot. You know, we have news every couple times a year at least. Someone leaves their kids in a car and they die. This is how you get that. And 37 kids were stuck in those vans. And that's new, that happened. We didn't hear about it for a very long time, about a year actually at this point. And that's the sort of just casual mistreatment of these kids that ICE just does and border enforcement just does, and it's just a thing. We're gonna give you Donald Trump's response to these sorts of reporting in just a little bit, but this is to give you an idea of, we're not talking at this point about the kids who've died. That happens all the time. We're talking about just the day-to-day experience of being a kid who happens to be under the control of the federal government, how they're treated, how savagely they're treated. Now, I wanna return to the sort of big story of the last week, and that is the Trump administration arguing in court that kids in these concentration camps don't need to be able to sleep at night, they don't need soap, they don't need toothbrushes, all of that. I found that to be horrendous. Many of you felt the same way, and some people, in fact, wanted to donate these sorts of things so that the kids would have access to them. If the government's not gonna provide them, American citizens decided to step up, which is certainly good. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, because this is last Sunday, a man named Austin Savage and 5 of his friends got in an SUV, went to an El Paso Target and bought diapers, wipes, soaps, and toys. They spent $340 and then headed to a Border Patrol facility holding migrant children in nearby Clint with the goal of donating their goods. But when they arrived, they found that the lobby was closed. The few Border Patrol agents moving in and out of a parking facility ignored them. So even though the American people, a group of great people, decided to take it upon themselves and spend their money to try to make the experience of these kids a little bit more tolerable, they weren't able to actually help. Border Patrol agents just weren't interested in engaging with them. What they did find when they went to that facility, though, was that they were not the first to try to help out those kids. Let's take a look at this note that they found. Someone had left diapers and toothpaste and soap, and the note says, "I heard y'all need soap and toothpaste for kids. Maybe more will be on its way soon." And thankfully in this case, more was on its way. The problem is, when you just leave the stuff at the facility, we have no idea if the kids actually get it. And again, while these sorts of stories, you're always gonna find things like this, they are heartwarming. It's not on individual Americans to go to Target and then bring stuff to detention facilities. That's not how this system is supposed to run. That's not sustainable. That in a number of these facilities, going across literally thousands of miles, that we can just hope that charity makes up for the vicious cruelty of the Trump administration's policy for these kids. That's not sustainable. It stands out not just in our recent experience in the US, but internationally as well. Take a look at how some people have responded to that news about the soap and the toothpaste. So if we bring up this tweet, you're gonna see one person, David Rode, who'd been held by the Taliban, said that they gave him toothpaste and soap. Michael Scott Moore, who was kidnapped by Somali pirates, say he was given toothpaste and soap. And other journalists who've been held in Iran and other facilities have said, no, they were given these things. So at this point, the bar is not just historically bad, it's not just historically low for the US. We're actually treating these kids worse than pirates treat them, okay? That should stand out, that should break through, but at this point, I'm not sure if it will. I mean, I told you yesterday on the show, I read that great quote from a Trump supporter who was like, "Stop trying to make us teary-eyed over these kids. I love kids, but it's on the parents not to break the law." And again, the vast majority of these people are not breaking the law. They are legally allowed under our asylum laws to apply for asylum in this country. But even if they were breaking the law, if you want any claim to being a moral person, let alone in the case of many of these people being a good Christian, the idea that our responsibility to treat kids in a humane way goes away when their parents decide to cross the border, that makes that system of morality a little bit too contingent for me and probably not worth a damn in a political sense. So the situation is actually worse. I want to return to that Clint, Texas detention facility where these good people try to drop off some supplies. An AP report last week described conditions at that particular place where there was inadequate food, water, and sanitation for 250 infants, children, and teens. A doctor who visited the facility later filed a report saying, quote, it could be compared to torture facilities. All but 30 of those children have since been taken out of the facility and to a tent detention center. Which I guess in 2019, that's progress, that if the AP goes in and if they can get a doctor to sign off on the fact that this is effectively like a facility out of one of the Saw movies, then maybe we can move the kids. But I ask you a follow-up question, move them to where? Move them to one of the Border Patrol facilities where we really hope that they can have soap. Do we have any reason to believe that wherever they were moved is better? Or were they simply shuffled to some other army facility? Maybe with some historic connection to, I don't know, one of the concentration camps of old in Japanese internment or something like that. Do we have any reason to believe that the kids are better off? Or is this like the end of a Mario level where it's like, oh, the princess isn't here, you need to go report at another facility. And then hopefully they won't be moved again and again and again. I have an idea. How about we treat these kids like humans regardless of where they are, regardless of whether there's a doctor on hand to testify as to the condition they're being treated, regardless of whether the AP has currently tracked down that facility. How about we treat them like humans? How about we, the richest country in the history of our species, give soap and toothpaste to these kids? But I don't have a lot of hope. And the reason I don't have a lot of hope is the response from two of the people who have the most direct authority over this sort of situation, Donald and Melania Trump. Melania, she's working on that Be Best thing. So she had this announcement, this is yesterday. First Lady Melania Trump on Monday announced new Be Best ambassadors to help, and I kid you not, improve the lives of children. The ambassadors will help further the First Lady's goal of educating children and parents about the issues they face and will focus on resources and opportunities to help make a difference in the lives of children. They'll act as points of contact for pushing Be Best forward in their agencies. I have to assume that Border Patrol, ICE, probably not gonna be amongst that list of agencies because you don't really need ambassadors to know what's necessary to improve the lives of children in those agencies. I think that what you need to do is pretty much screaming in our face at this point. And I guess there's a small chance, a remote chance that this announcement by Melania Trump on her Be Best thing is just shockingly tone deaf considering what's in the news lately. But considering the attire that she's worn when going to these sorts of facilities, I don't know why we should give her that sort of benefit of the doubt. It seems like this is once again spitting on our face. You guys around the country, oh, you're really concerned about these kids? I'm gonna make a mockery of the situation by pretending that these ambassadors, often God knows where, are gonna improve the lives of kids when I know exactly what I should be advocating for and I choose not to. So that's Melania. Let's talk about Trump, asked this weekend by Chuck Todd about all of this reporting, about the torture conditions these kids are being held in these concentration camps. Here was his response.
They were built.
Let's talk about what's happening now. Your administration, you're not doing the recreation, you're not even schooling these kids anymore. You've gotten rid of all that stuff.
We're doing a fantastic job under the circumstances.
Fantastic job under the circumstances. Circumstances, again, that he can say over and over that he was saddled by this, but we've been reporting from the very beginning, this is the result of choices made by the Trump administration. Purposeful choices by him, by people like Stephen Miller, to inflict purposeful suffering on these populations to send a message. To send a message to Mexico, to Guatemala, to El Salvador, all those countries. We don't want you to come, and so we're gonna convince you that if you get over here, you're going to suffer. Some of you might die. That is the official government policy. And so Melania doesn't care, Donald Trump doesn't care. I just want to end with something I noticed, and it struck out as any human should respond to what we're seeing here in exactly the way I'm going to show you. Not as Melania did, with at best ignorance, if not disdain for these kids, and not trying to pass the buck like Donald Trump while putting horrendous, savage policies into place. I want to go back a year to literally the day or two before we first had, who would then later become Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who was down at the border visiting these facilities. She came back to her district, she Skyped into the show and talked about the experience. There were some photos that were taken at the time that weren't released until just yesterday. And here is one. There's others that you can see on her feed, but she's literally breaking down at what she's seeing there. And understand that she was having that 100% understandable, and I would say it should be the demanded response to what we're seeing there. This is before we knew about so much of it. We didn't know how horrendous the conditions were. We hadn't seen in a period of just a few months 6 kids dying, but she had a human response. And honestly, the opposition on the other side, they hate her for that. They're mocking her right now on Twitter for tearing up at this horrendous stain on our history that we're writing every day. Someday, hopefully, people will be able to look back with a little bit of perspective and know how right we were to speak out against these policies, to identify them as concentration camps. But that battle is going on literally every day right now as we try to get something approaching a sane, humane policy to manage the crisis that we're seeing. Thank you for watching this clip from the Damage Report. For more content from the show and access to TYT Network members-only exclusives, go to tyt.com/Brooke. Wait, no, it's tyt.com/John. Go to tyt.com/John to sign up.